Welcome to another AgGateway Europe webinar. I want to thank Connie Graumans, the Managing Director of AgGateway Europe, for organizing this event. My name is Jim Wilson, and I'm President of AgGateway Global Network. Today, Michael Larsen is with me to discuss ADAPT and the ISO plugin. Michael works for Topcon Agriculture. Michael, please tell us what you do for Topcon, tell us what you do in AgGateway, and then dive right into your topic.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. As you said, I'm Michael Larsen with Topcon Agriculture. I've been with Topcon for about 4 years, and previous to that, I was with AGCO. During that time, I've been aligned with FMIS software. So I've had experience with integrating ADAPT and participating within the ADAPT project within AgGateway. Within my experience in Topcon. So the presentation today is just an overview, primer for ADAPT in the ISOXML plugin, and I've got just 10 or 12 slides to go through. So it'll be a brief presentation, again, just kind of a primer for those that might just be getting with ADAPT and have some interest with ADAPT and especially the ISOXML plugin. So let me begin with ADAPT objectives. The goal of the ADAPT project is to create tools for the agricultural industry to make it easier and less expensive to move data to and from various systems, especially field operations data. There's a number of different formats out there, ISOXML included, and there's always been a challenge of transmitting that data from one system to another and having a common language to do that. So the objective of ADAPT is to provide that common language to allow transfer of agricultural data from one system to another. And these systems could be desktop software, web-based platforms. More and more it's a platform-to-platform communication. ADAPT also provides a framework and governance for individuals and companies to create plugins for proprietary formats or for their own needs within the ADAPT framework. So the vision of ADAPT, again, is to deal with the reality of there being multiple proprietary formats, industry formats like ISOXML in the marketplace, to handle all of those variety of proprietary formats, as well as reference data from different manufacturers and so forth, to combine that all into a common system, a common platform, and relying on ADAPT to facilitate the communication between systems. Okay, so the key to the vision of ADAPT is to drive that interoperability between software systems to make it as seamless as possible. So about ADAPT, some key things. If you come away from this webinar with nothing else other than the information on this slide, I think this webinar will be a success. So some key things about ADAPT. ISOXML and ADAPT are not in competition. They complement each other. ADAPT is industry supported, and its participants come from a cross-section of agricultural companies. ADAPT wasn't created by, and it's not being enhanced by just one company, right? It's not a blue thing or a green thing or a red thing. It's a collaboration of many, many companies. And we're seeing more and more as ADAPT gets a foothold that we're getting contributions from more and more companies and individuals. And another key point is that the ISO plugin, ISOXML format, has a plugin, but it's just one of several plugins that have been made for the ADAPT framework. So ADAPT isn't just ISOXML, it's also a number of different formats. So a couple slides about the AgGateway and AEF relationship. AEF in the ISOXML standard, right, really focuses on the upper part of this diagram, where it's machines and consoles and ECUs and communication in the field among those. AgGateway's emphasis is communication between various systems, more on the FMIS side, right? But there is a middle ground between the two. So if we look at the types of data that the two focus on, maybe we can add some clarity about what the emphasis of each is. So ISOXML, again, is primarily focused on machine control, information happening in the CAN bus, in the tractor and combine, and so forth. It's focused on task data logging and console to ECU communication. ADAPT is a bit different, maybe perhaps a bit more broad. Its focuses on software generating planned tasks, interpreting log data, FMIS to FMIS or platform to platform communication, and also encompassing many other use cases, for example, irrigation, weather, and scouting data. These other use cases likely will never have a home or a place within the ISOXML, the 11783 standard, but ADAPT has, within the framework, the capability to handle these other use cases. So some examples of data types that are common between the two would include the grower farm field list, field boundaries, task information. These are things that are common to both ISOXML and ADAPT. Okay. So a bit more about AEF and the AgGateway collaboration, specific around ADAPT. Where do these things about ADAPT happen within the two groups? Well, they happen within the AgGateway, within projects like Spade and Pail. These were the projects, in particular the Spade project, where the need for ADAPT was made clear, and that was the genesis of ADAPT. This also happens within the product group 9 within AEF, and there's also a lot of conversation around ADAPT within the EFDI group. Okay. So the ADAPT team is absolutely coordinating with AEF about the ISO 11783 plugin. Right, the goal is to have the ADAPT ISO plugin support the conformance tests. The goal is to provide a free open source software for FMISs to have one way to read write ISOXML 11783 task files. And the machine or terminal manufacturers can comply with the ISO plugin as it is, or use it as a base for their own proprietary ISO plugin. So the current ISO plugin could just be a starting point for a manufacturer if they so choose. So just a bit more detail about the AgGateway project development process. There is a formal process within each of the AgGateway projects, and it involves various groups, including subject matter experts, sales manager, agronomy manager, these people that know the use cases, the user stories. They know what happens in their organization. And that begins with the user stories and use cases, flows into the data buckets and ISO 11783 gap check process, points of the process in the development life cycle. And the gap check with the 11783 spec is an important part of this, because this is where the two groups, AgGateway and AEF, are collaborating to make enhancements to the 11783 spec, to add DDIs, to clarify things, to make improvements to the specification, to support the needs of both the industry but also ADAPT. So a few slides about ADAPT itself. ADAPT stands for Ag Data Application Programming Toolkit. Some of the key terms for ADAPT, FMIS and MICS, of course, we're familiar with that from the 11783 specification. FMIS is a Farm Management Information System. So that's what's happening in the office, in the cloud. MICS is a Mobile Implement Control System. Of course, this is the equipment display or a console. ADAPT itself is an open source toolkit. It includes the framework. The key parts to ADAPT, including the framework, also include the plugins, right? So there's several plugins, one for ISOXML and several more for proprietary formats from companies in the industry, okay? ADAPT is an open source software project, okay? It's completely open to the community. Anybody that wants to contribute can go on to GitHub today and download the code, start to contribute, start to add comments, add questions, and so forth, okay? So this should be an advantage both to the business and from the technical side for companies to quickly begin to collaborate and interact with the community about this. The source code is readily available and developers can quickly begin to use it. And it should promote rapid code enhancements and improvements to ADAPT. And just a couple more slides. This is one that you may have seen before, but it's just an example of two FMISs that are trying to communicate to each other about a proprietary data format, or perhaps it's an ISOXML data. And regardless of what formats are in play, the two systems, FMIS-A on the left and FMIS-B on the right, can use those proprietary formats to ingest data into their system through ADAPT, include reference data from a third party, and include all that data into the ADAPT format essentially, and use ADAPT to communicate between the systems, right? So it really helps with the flow of data. The two systems can rely on just ADAPT to facilitate communication rather than a number of different proprietary formats within the industry. Okay, so really my final slide here is just a pointer to the right place to begin. If you haven't already, the right place to start is adaptframework.org. Okay, this is a place where you have links to both GitHub repositories, you have ADAPT videos, you have application notes about getting started, and particular points of how to begin to integrate ADAPT into your organization. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it. We have some time for Q&A now.
Thanks, Michael. Well done. The first question is, what is the best way to get started implementing ADAPT?
Good question. If you're just beginning, begin with adaptframework.org. Start with the application notes. One of the application notes is getting started with ADAPT. And I think that would be a good choice of where to begin. Really, you have to understand your goal in using ADAPT. What are you trying to, what are your intentions of what you want to do by implementing ADAPT? It's likely that you're interested in either leveraging ADAPT to use the plugins to interpret the various data types that are supported by the plugins, or you're interested in communicating with various FMIS companies by using ADAPT. The key thing when you begin down the path is to understand your own data set, right? Because you're going to have to take your data model, whatever it is, and make sure that you understand it against the ADAPT data model. But in short, the right place to begin is the adaptframework.org application notes. If you have developers that are ready to go, I'm sure they're going to be eager to get into the GitHub area. And there are occasional meetings, there are recurring meetings within the ADAPT group that you can begin to get involved with, both on the technical and the business side.
Thanks, Michael. Next question. Can you explain how the ADM plugin and the ISO plugin work together?
The ISO plugin is obviously specific to the 11783 standard. So this is the plugin that essentially converts the task data file, the ISOXML, into the serialized ADAPT format. The same can be done with data that's in ADAPT already, and it can be the ADAPT plugin, the ADM plugin can be used to facilitate transfer between two systems, right? So they are distinct and unique plugins, but each has a different purpose. The ISO plugin, of course, is specific to the 11783 format.
Next question. Do we have a time frame for the ADAPT 2 release?
I think we're talking about the ISOXML plugin. The formal release is just a matter of days or weeks away for version 2. I think perhaps by the end of this month or early next month is my understanding.
We have a comment which I will respond to. The comment is, it would be nice if you would offer some videos that would help people get started. Well, thank you for that comment. We have created a number of videos, but none that are targeted at getting started. To that end, AgGateway has hired a consultant to help us develop and organize our resources to make the experience for new developers easier. We should see the first results of that effort in late April. Next is a question from a webinar participant in Turin, Italy. Why is it necessary for the resources folder with representation system.xml and unit system.xml to be deployed with the plugin? Why can't the resources be embedded in the DLL? It makes it challenging to deploy ADAPT in some scenarios.
I think that's a great one for the technical team. Yeah, I think I'd save that question for a future webinar or to the technical team. If you want to capture that, I can put that to my contacts within the technical team, and we can have a side conversation to make sure that the answer is given.
Next question. Do you have the current status of plugins from any of the ag manufacturers? Which companies are working on this project? And Michael, I might suggest in your response to address companies that plan on using the ISO plugin as the plugin for their equipment.
Yeah, I don't have a full list in front of me of who's using it. Jim, you might have a better handle on that. I can speak for Topcon. I know that we are leveraging the ISOXML plugin, absolutely. We intend to use it as a primary way to facilitate platform-to-platform communication. I know Deere and CNH are both working on their own plugin for their proprietary formats. Deere's is released, of course, and CNH's is on the way. And there is a long list of companies that have essentially promised or indicated that they're going to ADAPT. Jim, like I said, you might have a list in front of you, or
I don't have a list in front of me, but I can follow up. Next question. ADAPT is mainly about exchanging data between FMISs. Could ADAPT also be used to exchange data between telemetry portals?
Yes, I think so. I think that it's a likely fit. I think it's a good use for ADAPT. I think it fits in into the EFDI conversation. Yes, I think there's a fit there.
On that point, if I might inject my own question, could you address ADAPT's scope with respect to data transformation and data transfer between systems?
Yeah, I think you're talking about the types of data, the types of tasks that we're able to handle now.
Right. So within scope for ADAPT is data transformation, comprehending various types of data formats through plugins, but it is out of scope for ADAPT to actually send data between systems or collecting data from systems.
Right. It's not a file transfer protocol, right? That's right. So what ADAPT is good at is the agronomic data. The things that I mentioned earlier about plan tasks, log tasks, that sort of agronomic data coming from the field, right? But also systems data related to those other examples of weather data, irrigation data, things that aren't core and common to ISOXML, but the various FMIS softwares for the AgGateway participants. That's what ADAPT is good at as well, including the plan tasks and log tasks.
Right. Okay. Next question. Does the ADAPT data model organize the data in a structure that can be easily transferred between two FMISs via an API? Many times, dense spatial data like yield, planting, etc. is too large to move through an API with acceptable performance.
I feel it can. I don't know that it can address the specific points about whether it's adequate, whether it would meet your expectations. In my experience, it is a workable way to do it. Even with the dense data that comes with as applied and harvest data, ADAPT has been useful to do just that, to facilitate the transfer of data.
Another question is there any gap when using ISO version 4 plugin to convert data between ISO and ADAPT back and forth? Perhaps another way to ask the question would be, is round-tripping data between ISOXML and the ADAPT data model lossless?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't want to state and be wrong whether it's lossless.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Ben Craker just posted a note in the chat window. Ben is with AGCO. He's the product manager for Global Fuse, Data, Partnerships, and Standards. He says that AGCO plans to use the ISO plugin. Also, we have another note here from one of our friends on the AEF EFDI team. And he says that EFDI could be used as a transfer protocol, which reinforces Michael's point that ADAPT is not a transfer protocol.
Right. And as far as EFDI, ADAPT would sit in that technology stack as a, it's a way of understanding and interpreting the data, but the mechanism to actually send the data, the file transfer protocols, that's where EFDI would have a larger role in it. ADAPT would just be a part of that technology stack.
Just a reminder that EFDI is an AEF initiative. If you want to get involved in that, just contact Michael, me, or Connie, and we will connect you with the EFDI leadership. And with that, we will wrap up. Thanks to all of you for joining. Thanks again to Michael Larsen from Topcon Agriculture for battling through the flu to prepare and present today. And thanks to Connie Graumans and AgGateway Europe for organizing this event. AgGateway Europe is eager to address other topics of interest in Europe. Just let Connie know what topics interest you. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Take care.